Can't wait. 100 days from now, we will have kickoff. Let's welcome in senior NFL writer Pete Prisco. Pete is here for some Prisco proclamations for the 2022 season. He has 4 of them, as it turns out. Now, Pete, the floor is yours. Give us proclamation number 1.
The Dallas Cowboys will miss the postseason. And I know a lot of people will say, what? In that division? Who's going to win the division? I already think the Eagles are my pick to win the division. I think Washington's going to be much better, and Dallas might end up being 3rd in that division. Here's the problem with the Cowboys. Can they rush the passer? And you'll sit here and say, well, Micah Parsons had a great year rushing the passer last year, but that takes him out of what they want to use him for, which is to play inside linebacker. That's one big issue. Remember, Randy Gregory isn't there. DeMarcus Lawrence didn't have a bunch of sacks last year. So rushing the passer, major concern. Can they get Sam Williams, a rookie, to become an effective edge rusher? That's another question. Now flip it to the offensive side of the ball. We know they've had a bunch of injuries on the offensive line. That's impacted that team in a big way. Can Tyron Smith stay healthy? Big issue there. Can Terrence Steele step up and be a good right tackle? Can they run the ball with Zeke Elliott, who says he's in great shape, but everybody's in great shape at this time of the year? And then there's the passing game. CeeDee Lamb is going to really elevate his game, I think, but who else? Michael Gallup coming off a major knee. I think there's a lot of questions with this team. They got to hope Jalen Tolbert, who I like, can really step up as a rookie. So if you're leaning on rookies for being big parts of your team early in the season and throughout the season, particularly as a pass rusher and a pass catcher, that's an issue.
Oh, Danny, go the other way.
So I'm going the other way. I actually have, we're going to do later on our show, some of our favorite division winner picks, and I like the Cowboys. So I think you rule out Washington and the Giants. I mean, the Giants have been atrocious. I'm not a believer in the Carson Wentz reclamation project getting another opportunity with Washington. I do think Philly is interesting, but I'm not buying into the Eagles just yet. I also think the Cowboys, there's a ton of pressure on Mike McCarthy and company. I think there is a sense of urgency, especially the way the playoff run ended last year, getting basically run all over. But I'm a big believer in Micah Parsons doing even more this year and possibly being in for the Defensive MVP award nominations, probably being in the mix for that conversation. And then a lot of this goes to Dak Prescott. I think this is going to be a massive year for Dak Prescott, who I think we forget how horrific that injury he was, or how horrific that injury he went through just a couple seasons ago. Last year was sort of to get your feet back underneath you. This year, with a lot of those young receivers, I do think that is an issue, but I think Dak Prescott will be able to put more of the Cowboys on his back this season and take them to the division title here in the East.
Well, and you look at it, I mean, the Cowboys have missed the playoffs in 3 of the last 5 seasons. They haven't made it past the divisional round since winning the Super Bowl. They haven't had back-to-back double-digit win seasons since 1995 and 1996. So, Pete, they have tied for the easiest schedule in the NFL, so that is a very brave proclamation that you have there. So what happens, Pete, if they do miss the playoffs in terms of Mike McCarthy?
Well, I think you'll probably see a change there. It depends. I mean, if Dak Prescott went down and they didn't miss the playoffs, that's not on Mike McCarthy. But if they play out with their key players being healthy and they do not make the playoffs, I think there will be a change there. And Sean Payton's name is in the mix. I think Sean Payton's going to coach next year. It's just a matter of where. And if the Cowboys' job came open, clearly Jerry Jones has an affinity for him. And I think that would be his job as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys if they don't make the postseason this year under Mike McCarthy.
I agree with you. I think Mike McCarthy might be one of the coaches with the most pressure on him and expectations to win. The division's light. Jeremy mentioned the schedule is going to be easy. I think if there's something that we know, Jerry Jones doesn't want to be patient and wait around and kind of wait through the thick and thin. And the massive elephant in the room that Pete mentioned is Sean Payton on the sidelines, who I do think will get back into the coaching realm. And it's always been mentioned there, the possibility to go to Dallas. If that opens up, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't take very much for the Cowboys to falter. I don't think it has to be like a 4-win season. I think they could just miss the playoffs in Pete's scenario, something like that, and you could see a change. But I think Mike McCarthy holds off the heat. I think he lasts. I think the Cowboys get to the playoffs.
It's going to be very interesting. I mean, that first month of the season, we'll see how the Cowboys do. If they start slow, maybe Jones is going to pull that trigger sooner rather than later. Okay, Pete, proclamation number 2, which concerns the AFC East.
The New England Patriots will finish under 500. And you'll look at the resume of Bill Belichick and say that's only happened twice in his entire existence as coach of the New England Patriots. What's going to happen a third time? And here's why. There is a lack of talent on that football team across the board. In working up my top 100, which will soon come out, by the way, of players, how many Patriots players will be on that list? And where will they be? I can guarantee you this much. There will not be a Patriots player above 80. And the only two guys that are in the conversation are two offensive linemen. This is not a good team. And here's another thing. Mac Jones regressed late last season, and everybody wanted to anoint him. Oh, what a steal, what a great pick. And Mac Jones is a good, solid player. But let's slow the roll a little bit. In 2 games against Buffalo, one late in the season they needed to win, no touchdown passes. One in the postseason, he threw 2 touchdown passes. One came down 33-3. The other came in the final 2 minutes down 47-7. Mac Jones regressed. That's a concern. They don't rush the passer very well. There's a lack of talent on this team. Miami and the Jets will both be better. Buffalo's the king of the division. The New England Patriots are going to have a hard time getting over 500 this year.
I don't hate the proclamation, although I want to dial it back a little bit when you said the Jets and Dolphins will both be better. I don't know if I'd be willing to go that far. I do totally agree with you. The Bills are going to reign supreme. I think there are massive question marks on this roster, and as great as a coach Bill Belichick has been throughout his career, he hasn't been the best general manager or selector of talent that's been out there. And I think the Cole Strange was a perfect example. The draft selection they took in the first round, when everyone turned and was like, who? What are they doing? And maybe he's a home run, but I think Bill Belichick got a little bit cute with that selection, as he's done before in the past. I think this roster has issue. The loss of Josh McDaniels looms large over that offense when you're going to be learning, a new play caller for you if you're Mac Jones, who I'm with. I don't think Mac Jones is the long-term franchise quarterback for the Patriots. And I think once again, this is just going to show you who meant more to the dynasty. It was Tom Brady all day long.
Danny, I said they will be better. I didn't mean they would necessarily be better than New England. I meant they're going to be better football teams than they were a year ago, which will in turn make it tougher for New England to win games against them, and could possibly split with both those teams, and that would really push them toward under 500.
Mac Jones getting rave reviews at OTAs, though. Slimmed down this offseason, says his diet is much more of an important thing in his training regime. They are plus 430.
Who have you ever heard is like, he doesn't look good? Like, have you ever heard a coach or somebody be like, yeah, this guy's not really worked that much? All we hear is how this is that time of year. Yeah, they do.
Talking about
it's that time of year. I think you look great this time of year. Pete looks great.
Every guy is in shape. Every injury is ahead of schedule. Don't worry about any of these players.
Patriots plus 430 to win the AFC East. Pete, I think of all the proclamations that you're going to make, number 3 is my favorite one. Tell us.
It's Trevor Lawrence is going to throw for over 4,000 yards and 32 touchdown passes. And I know people will look at last year and say, oh my gosh, how could you possibly say that? Well, last year was a disaster. The coaching staff was awful. Urban Meyer had no idea what he was doing in implementing an offense and what to do with Trevor Lawrence. They also added playmakers. They were slow. They added Christian Kirk, who I think is going to have a big year for them. They improved on the offensive line. Brandon Scherf will step in and really help them. They get Travis Etienne back, who will help in the passing game. And we know the history of Doug Peterson with quarterbacks. He's been outstanding with them. When he had Carson Wentz as a rookie, he had a good year. But the second year, he was phenomenal. He was on his way to winning the MVP possibly when he tore up his knee. And I think we're going to see that type of jump for Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Doug Peterson will spread the ball around. They really do understand each other right off the bat. I think it's a good relationship, unlike last year. I look for Trevor Lawrence to really elevate his game. And if you go back to the end of last season, when he played the Colts in the season finale, that's the Trevor Lawrence you're going to see this year. He was outstanding in that game. He will put up big numbers. Doug Peterson knows how to make quarterbacks successful.
I like it. I like where you're headed. I think it might be just a little bit above of where Trevor Lawrence would be, but that's under normal circumstances. Like if he had the same coach, the same system year 1 to year 2, and I would expect this type of jump. I'm just curious to see where Trevor Lawrence is with Doug Peterson's system, where he wants to go with the football, because I think we take for granted how complex systems are. And Trevor Lawrence, his career could have been derailed. I don't think it will be, but that was the worst coaching hire we might have seen in the last 20 years of the NFL, trying to make Urban Meyer an NFL coach where it just didn't work, and there was significant damage done with a dysfunctional locker room. I think Trevor Lawrence will be fine. I think Doug Peterson is a perfect hire, having played quarterback himself. I'm with you, Pete. I just don't know if that's how high he'll get. I think he'll be in that territory. I don't know if I'll say he crosses 4,000 and crosses 32 touchdowns just yet, but I think he'll be really close.
Danny, Wentz went from 16 to 33 touchdown passes in year 1 to year 2, cut his interceptions down from 14 to 7, and became the first Eagles quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards. You see a pattern there?
I do,
think
but that was
really
year 1 and year 2
similar.
with the same system, right?
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I'm worried about. I think you'll see a massive jump next year. I think he'll be better. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is going to be better year 2, but I think it's going to be the familiarity with the system with Doug Peterson. I think you're going to be close, but I think year 3 is when you see just the massive improvement that I think you're expecting this year.
Okay, there were 8 4,000-yard passers last season. The last Jags quarterback to do it, by the way, Blake Bortles. Did it back in 2015. They went to
garbage time. That was garbage time year.
Yes, it was.
5-11. They went They went that year with Bortles at the helm, and we'll see how Lawrence does. Pete, I think bang on there with it being a system issue with Lawrence, and we're going to find out soon enough with the Jaguars. All right, let's get that last proclamation. Pete, fire away.
Even though our producer Noah didn't think this was out there enough for viral world, I'm going with it anyways. Joey Bosa will be the Defensive Player of the Year. And people say, oh, well, he's always in that mix. No, he's the 7th ranked candidate. His odds are 7th best. And here's why he's going to be Defensive Player of the Year. They will stop the run better. They gave up 4.6 per rush a year ago. They were dreadful against the run. They add Sebastian Joseph Day. They add Austin Johnson. They will be better against the run. That will give him more opportunities to get after the quarterback. But more than that, he's got a running mate again. He's got Khalil Mack now on the other side. When you have Khalil Mack on the other side, you're not going to be able to double him as much, A. And B, when Joey Bosa had his best season, in 2014, he had 12 and a half sacks. Do you know how many sacks Melvin Ingram had that year? 10. You get a double-digit guy next to him, and he's going to amp up those numbers in a big way. Joey Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year.
I like it. I think the Chargers are going to be good. I do think it's a longer shot than even our producer gave you credit for. Health, if he can stay healthy there and gets those numbers. The most important thing you mentioned was the fact that he's going to get better matchups. You put somebody on the other side, all of a sudden you can't always slide protection to get the best, situation matchup for you to defend you. You can't keep in a tight end and chip every time. You can't keep the back to chip you every time because you have to worry about both sides. So I think that's probably going to be the biggest benefit for Joey Bosa is the fact that the other side is Khalil Mack, who teams are going to have to respect. So I don't hate it from a long shot perspective, Pete. I'm with you.
Joey Bosa 20-1. His brother Nick Bosa 14-1. The favorite, of course, T.J. Watt and Aaron Donald sitting at 7-1 as we sit now at the end of May with the NFL season 100 days away. Senior NFL writer Pete Prisco making his early 2022 proclamations here on the Football Happy Hour alongside Danny Kanell. For more on Pete's proclamations and likely a few proclamations of their own, go check out Will Brinson and Company on the Pick Six podcast. Pete's never on there, but he'll be discussed. You can download and follow the Pick Six Pod wherever you get your preferred podcast audio. You can also watch on YouTube. Welcome back to the Football Happy Hour. Jeremy St. Louis alongside Danny Kanell, Pete Prisco joining us via Zoom. Time now for Danny's top 32 starting quarterback rankings. And taking a look at this list, Danny, there's a lot to discuss here and break down. We're going to go in the reverse order. So we're going to start with quarterbacks 32 through 23. And one of the things that sticks out here, Zach Wilson is just ahead of Sam Darnold. So,
hey, at least he's not 32.
What's the difference between those two when you're looking at your last place starters?
Darnold's had multiple options. He's had multiple opportunities to move up on this list. Zach Wilson coming off his rookie year, even from what you've seen, I've got to expect he would get a little bit better. But it was bad, and that's why I had him so low on this list. He was third worst in the NFL in his Pro Football Focus grade. He was last in the NFL in completion percentage. He was third worst in the yards per attempt category. He had the worst adjusted completion percentage. He was last in passer rating, and he was 34th. There were only 32 starting quarterbacks. There were 34th in quarterback adjusted, in the defense adjusted value over average category. It was not great. I thought the Jets reached for him when they selected him. I was not real pleased with what we saw last year. If I'm the Jets, I'm concerned long term about whether Zach Wilson is the answer. I did not like what I saw last year, and I worry that some of the habits that were instilled in him last year carry over from year one to year two.
Yeah, but you did see growth, and I thought that was important for him down the stretch. I think that's the most important thing when you look at a young quarterback. I think in his last 3 games, he threw 3 touchdown passes and no picks. And yeah, that's not something to be overly excited about, but it was improvement. And I think that's the biggest thing for him is getting better week in and week out, and he did. Is he here's a guy on your list that's going to be higher on that list, and I'm bullish on him. I've been bullish on him. Davis Mills will be in the 20s by the end of next year. How about that? There's something to hang your hat on. Davis Mills is going to surprise a lot of people and become a really good NFL quarterback. I'm not going to be great, but he's going to be in that middle tier, one of those guys that, throws for 30 touchdown, 28, 29, 30, 31 touchdown passes and keeps his team competitive, because I think there's going to be a big leap for him this year with the Texans.
We were discussing the quarterback stuff yesterday in the newsroom. I said, Pete's going to be on Davis Mills. So that's not a shocker, Pete, that you think Davis Mills is going to show that progression this year with Houston, even though their win total is not that high. The thing that surprised me about 32 to 23, Danny, was Marcus Mariota ahead of everybody.
I think this could be a perfect opportunity for him to get a second chance after getting a breather, sitting behind Derek Carr, go and get a fresh opportunity. I worry about the team, but I think he's got a lot of physical skills that I would like to see in a quarterback. He's mobile, he's accurate, he's a quick decision maker, and it's not like he's exactly above a bunch of Hall of Famers, the list that's behind him.
He's ahead of Davis Mills, he's ahead of Mitchell Trubisky.
So I think he's played,
guys.
for me, he's played a lot more than Davis Mills has. And I get the potential and Davis Mills is becoming a trendy kind of, quarterback to watch out for the Texans. I worry about the team that he's on and him actually earning his way to another year starting. Marcus Mariota, I think, in a kind of a fresh atmosphere, a fresh environment, I think he's going to be a quarterback that'll maybe play himself into a longer-term contract with the Falcons.
Okay, let's look at the next crop of quarterbacks here. And not a lot of love for Alabama as we look at this next trio. Some of their former quarterbacks all in a row here. So explain the reasoning and the order of these former Alabama quarterbacks.
So I think Alabama quarterbacks are some of the hardest to evaluate coming out of the University of Alabama because everything is always clean. They have the best offensive line, the best running back, and the best wide receivers, but that never happens in the NFL. You don't have all day to throw. You don't have guys running wide open, and I think it's a big jump for a lot of these Alabama quarterbacks as they get there. So I had Jalen, Tua, they're 21-22, kind of right next to each other, slightly above on Jalen Hurts because I think he's got more mobility. I think the Eagles built their system to his skill set. And Tua, obviously this is a massive year for him to prove it with all the weapons they put around him. But I think the concerns about his arm strength are 100% legit. And then we talked earlier in this show about Mac Jones, what we expect from him. I think the loss of Josh McDaniels is going to loom large and the lack of talent around him. I think Mac Jones would be a quarterback who, in a system surrounded with talent, could win a lot of games, but that's not what the Patriots have this season.
Danny, which one of those Alabama quarterbacks would you take over Trevor Lawrence? Not one of them. Are you serious? It's not even close. Are you serious with this? You can't rank those guys ahead of Trevor Lawrence.
I had Trevor Lawrence. I had Trevor Lawrence just behind them, and I would expect he will make a big jump, but he's got to go out there and show me that he's able to get rid of those. He's got to get rid of those skeletons in the closet from last year, and I know it was a bad situation.
How could you rank him this way? If you had to pick your team tomorrow afternoon, Danny Kanell, general manager, are you taking Trevor Lawrence or Tua or Jalen Hurts or Mac Jones?
For one season? Because I went for one season on all these, which will explain my number one out there.
Now.
If we're having a draft of quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence might be a top 10 overall out of all the quarterbacks in the NFL.
Right now, among Of that group.
I'm saying
who
for
you
1
picking?
year. For 1 year, if I want a quarterback
no, for
this
now.
year.
What year are we talking about? What year? Okay, we'll talk about this year.
Yes,
Going forward.
that's
Who
what
would
I'm
you rather
saying.
have?
I would rather have one of those guys
Danny.
over Trevor Lawrence for this season. Long-term Trevor Lawrence.
You've been
this
spending
season,
way too
this
much
one.
time on the golf course.
Oh, get the old golf course rip in there. Wow, Pete coming
You got
in.
Jalen Hurts
Pete
winning
coming
the
in
NFC
hot.
East, and you're down on him? Man.
I like Jalen Hurts, but Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback than Jalen
I think so.
Hurts.
Long-term,
And
I think
he's
he'll have a better
than Tua.
career. I agree.
And he's better than Tua, too.
Let me ask you this, Pete. Of these three quarterbacks, right, so we talk about the situation in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. Danny's not sold. The situation with Tua in Miami, Danny's not sold. If you put Mac Jones on either of those teams, would you expect him to perform better than the quarterbacks that they have there right now in Jalen and Tua?
It's hard to evaluate him when you're comparing him to Jalen Hurts because of what Jalen Hurts can do with his legs. I mean, how would they play it if he's in there? And I think this is a big year for Jalen Hurts. I thought there was real improvement by him as we went throughout the season, but there's got to be even more. He won't be the quarterback 2 years from now, and I think there will be. So it's hard to evaluate it. But of those three, Mac Jones is probably the most NFL ready in terms of throwing the football and his ability to decipher things and get it out. But I think Jalen Hurts might have the most upside of any of those three.
So, Pete, would the order for you be Jalen, Mac, and then Tua?
Correct.
Okay.
As of right now, correct. There's a big, and by the way, I'm going to see Tua on Wednesday and Thursday. I'm looking forward to it because I'm going to their mini camp. But it's a big year for Tua. He's got to prove to people. Both Tua and Jalen Hurts go into this season with prove-it years, and if they prove it, they'll be the long-term starters. If not, they'll be bench warmers, maybe looking for a job on some other team.
Well, certainly no excuses for Tua with what they've surrounded him with in Miami, even his check-down guy, one of the fastest guys in the league. All right, here's a bit of a stunner. Danny, Kyler Murray. What do you have against Kyler Murray?
His attitude. I need to see somebody who's going to be a better team player.
Okay.
I mean, I'm tired of hearing about the drama of him scrubbing his social media accounts. I also would like to see a quarterback who can do it without some of his best weapons. When we get to the top tier of quarterbacks, we'll look at some guys who it doesn't matter who you put around them, they're still going to find ways to win games. We saw what happened when DeAndre Hopkins went down, how much it impacted Kyler Murray's season. And I'm worried about the intangibles. Where is his mind? Does he want to get a long-term contract or does he want to win games? You can do both, but sometimes you have to win first. The money will come later. I do think it's interesting that some of these smaller quarterbacks that we all thought, like, hey, the NFL, maybe there's a new trend that size doesn't matter. We've seen Baker Mayfield struggle. We saw Kyler Murray struggle somewhat. I think teams are starting to reevaluate, hey, can this be our quarterback for the next 10 years if he has his limitations? The flashes of brilliance have been there for Kyler Murray. I need to see it over a course of a full 17-game season.
Danny makes a lot of really good points about Kyler Murray. I mean, look, he's faded down the stretch the last couple of seasons, and that's a concern. He's not a big guy. He gets beat up a little bit. When he can't move the way he normally moves, that impacts the way they play offense. And he hasn't played as well when DeAndre Hopkins wasn't there, but who would? But he's not behind Jameis Winston and Jimmy Garoppolo. One of those is an FSU allegiance. That's all that is. That's garnet and gold love. That's what that is. And Jimmy Garoppolo, you could probably trade for him. Give him a turkey sandwich. You'll get Jimmy Garoppolo right now if you want him. Come on, Danny.
All right.
And by the way, Jimmy's Paisan, so I'm partial to him. But give me a break. Kyler Murray is ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo.
At some point, I know that, and this is a controversial topic, I know that wins aren't a stat. But you've got to give Jimmy Garoppolo some credit for going to 2 out of the last 3 NFC championship games and getting his team to a Super Bowl. And I know that the 49ers are even looking at him saying, hey, that's not good enough for us. But at some point, there has to be value in that. So right now, I'm going to take him over. And then Jameis Winston, our guy Emery Hunt has him as an MVP candidate this season. I think he's a lock for the comeback player of the year. I think the continuity with the staff and the system is really going to benefit Jameis. And I thought we saw in a very limited window last year a better decision-making Jameis Winston, which could be the difference in him playing his way back in the top 10 of this list.
Jameis Winston, 150-1 to win the MVP. I just can't believe that Kyler Murray's below Jared Goff. That was the thing that got me. Jared Goff in Detroit.
Hey, another quarterback who's been to a Super Bowl.
Wow, okay.
Get Kyler Murray to the playoffs first, then we'll talk.
All right, let's go inside the top 12. We had a ridiculous high school highlight from Lamar Jackson in the program on Monday. Not enough to convince Danny, though, to put him inside the top 10?
He's just outside. I'm a little bit worried about Lamar Jackson. I mean, you look at since his MVP season, the touchdowns have come down and the interceptions are going up.
Yeah.
And the more film you get of a quarterback in the NFL, teams spend all offseason preparing for you specifically. And I do think defenses have figured out somewhat how to defend Lamar Jackson, forcing him to make tougher throws down the field to the outside, the perimeter of the field. And I think until he proves teams wrong that he can exploit them, I think that's going to be a problem for Lamar Jackson. I think the Ravens also know that, and so they're trying to figure out a balance between how do we stretch the field vertically and keep what we do best, which is run the football around Lamar Jackson. So I'm a little bit concerned. I hope he bounces back. I hope he proves me wrong because I love him. I loved him coming out. Love the MVP season that we saw. Love that the Ravens are like, we don't need a pocket passer. We'll go ahead and embrace the running quarterback, which they've done, but defenses have adjusted, and I'm worried about that for Lamar Jackson.
You have Lamar Jackson ranked behind Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins is top 10 in every passing quarterback, since he's been a starting quarterback.
You know what he's not top 10 in? Winning big games. I mean, come on,
How many has
Danny.
Lamar won? How many playoff wins are we talking about for Lamar Jackson?
True, but he's only been around for a little while. Give me a break, Danny. Look, I think you're right in a lot of areas. Lamar Jackson needs to improve as a passer, whether they embrace it or not. This is a passing league. He has to improve. But you can't tell me anybody in this league, including the Minnesota Vikings, would take Kirk Cousins over Lamar Jackson.
I don't know. I might push back on that one. I think a lot of teams would take Kirk Cousins over Lamar Jackson. You have to build an offense around Lamar Jackson. You don't have to do that with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter whether you build it around him or not. He wins, and he's won some big games, which Kirk Cousins doesn't do, and B, he's a better player and he's a better quarterback.
He's not a better thrower of the football. He's not a better thrower of the football.
This one baffled me more than anything.
Lamar, 25th ranked quarterback in the league last year in yards, 17th in QBR, 37 wins in his 49 starts for Lamar Jackson. We saw on the side panel there Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert right next to each other. Earlier in the day, Ryan Wilson was on here talking about he thinks Justin Herbert might be a good pick for MVP if you're looking to throw a punt on a long odd. Who would you rather have today, Danny?
I'd rather have Burrow. And it's hard to put I think Justin Herbert has a stronger arm. I think he's a better athlete. But Joe Burrow's got that it factor. I mean, Pete always talks about the fire in the belly, and Joe Burrow has it in spades. He just does. He's got a clutch gene that you saw down the stretch of last season, that you saw on display at times in the playoffs. I think he's just got that it factor that you want to rally around, that you want to play for. From a mentality perspective, I'll be curious to see what Pete thinks of this. I think mentality-wise, he's got a little bit of Marino. Marino was brash, cocky, felt he could make every throw out there and wasn't afraid to take chances and usually came up on the right side of him. I think Burrow's got that similar mentality, that cockiness that really toes the line between being too cocky and just being super confident. He's got it in spades. Justin Herbert, to me, needs a little bit more dog in him before I'll go take him first. But they're both great.
Yeah, I have a tough time with this one. This would be like a parent picking between his two favorite children in terms of young quarterbacks.
It would be.
You know how I felt about both these guys coming out. I love Joe Burrow. I said he had the fire in the belly, and I think that's played out exactly that way. And Herbert has the NFL prototypical skills that you love from the position. So picking one or the other, I can't do it. I think it's that close, and I think we have to let it play out for another year before I decide which one. You would say, look, Burrow got his team to the Super Bowl already. He's got a leg up, but Herbert put up some amazing numbers last year, and I think he's going to be even better this year. So that's a tough one for me. I'll call it a tie.
And both teams are in very, very difficult divisions, very competitive divisions. So certainly they'll be neck and neck again this year. The number one quarterback on Danny's list, the defending MVP. We've talked about Aaron Rodgers before being close to perfect last season. He hasn't done anything to diminish that in your eyes, Danny, despite losing his top receiving weapon in Devontae Adams.
I just look at the most gifted thrower of the football, the most accurate passer that we've seen in the game, and it makes it look effortless out there. Now, the one thing you could hold against him is where are the Super Bowl titles to back that up, and where are the playoff deep runs, especially with their rattling off these 13-win seasons. But I think all the concern about Davante Adams being off to the Raiders is much ado about nothing. We've seen Aaron Rodgers do this throughout his career. Nobody really knew who Davante Adams was when he was coming out, just like I don't think a lot of people know Christian Watson or even a fourth rounder like Romeo Doubs, who they picked out of Nevada. I think we will know about them because Aaron Rodgers will make them look good. He is that good. He elevates. You could put a bunch of no-names out there, a bunch of undrafted free agents, and Aaron Rodgers would take him to double-digit wins. He is that good. He's at the top of his game, making it look easy.
Yeah, look, he's probably number one right now, but I can tell you by the end of this season, you know who might be number one? And I'm leaning that way? Josh Allen. And I was right about that all along. That's another one I'll take credit for. He is special. And what he does year in and year out to grow, I think he could be number one by the end of the season. But I'm okay with Rodgers number one as well.
All right, Rodgers.
The humble Pete Prisco today.
Yeah, right. Rodgers plus 800, by the way, the league
I
in
get so
passing
many wrong. I got to hey, Danny, I get so many wrong. I got to take them when they're right. So.
Right.
Our thanks to former quarterback, CBS Sports football analyst Danny Kanell, senior NFL writer Pete Prisco, joining us to discuss Danny's top 32 starting quarterbacks. Here's the top 10 as we head towards the 2022 season, which of course starts 100 days from now. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Pat Mahomes, your top three.
100 days to the start of the NFL season, so we are celebrating by taking a look at week one. 100 days from now, we get to see these guys, the reigning Super Bowl champs, the Rams, hosting the team which is the favorite to hoist the Lombardi this year, Josh Allen and the Bills. The Bills falling oh so short the past couple of seasons of the Super Bowl, but both teams looking to start the season hot and never look back. The Bills, as I mentioned, are the favorite to win the Super Bowl at plus 650. The Rams, they're not the first, second, third, fourth. They're the fifth favorite to win with 11-1 odds. Now, as far as this game is concerned, nearly 100 days out where the teams stand right now, the Rams are favored by 1 at home. Let's welcome back in Pete Prisco and Danny Kanell. Week one picks. Why not 100 days out, right? Nothing's going to change between now and then. Let's start with Bills at Rams, the very first game. As I mentioned, Danny, look, it is very close to a pick-em. The total here, 52 and a hook.
Yeah, this to me comes about who wants it more. The Rams, I think, are still celebrating, and it's been one of those off seasons, and they're trying to figure out
like
how
we've
to
seen that from Sean McVay.
Right, exactly,
right?
exactly. No doubt. They're still recovering from that Super Bowl parade they saw. Still trying to figure out how to get Aaron Donald paid. He's talking about possibly retiring. I think the Bills are on a mission this season. I think it starts in week one with a convincing win over the Rams. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Bills to win this game outright on the road week one and get off to a really strong start behind Josh Allen and company.
I'm with you, Danny. I'm bullish on the Bills. I thought they'd win it last year, and I still think they would have won it if they didn't have the disastrous 13 seconds at the end of that game against Kansas City. Adding Von Miller, who, by the way, was on the opposite sideline to win a Super Bowl last season, will really impact what they need to do in terms of sack, fumble, game over in the fourth quarter. They will be better on defense. Josh Allen probably will win the MVP this year. That's my early pick. I'll take Buffalo plus the points. We're bucking a lot of trends, by the way, because the home opener, season home opener, usually goes the way of the home team, and so we're really bucking some trends in taking the Buffalo Bills.
Let's jump to Sunday Night Football week one here. We get Bucks at Cowboys. The Bucks are favored by 2.5 on the road. The total here is 52. I believe you guys are on opposite sides. We'll check right now. Pete, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Cowboys at home, even though I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. How weird is that? I just think that in this scenario, you're at home, season opener, place is going to be jumping. The Bucks are transitioning a little bit in terms of some of their pass rush guys. They got to get more from, Joe Tryon, and I think he's got to be a guy that steps up his game. So when I look at this, I'm going to take Dallas at home as a home dog in this scenario.
So I guess we can hold off on the Cowboys' demise, Pete, because you're ready to say they're not going to win the division. I think this comes down again to one of those urgency situations. The Cowboys, Mike McCarthy's on the hot seat. Dak Prescott, a lot of eyeballs on him. A lot of people, the last time we saw them in the playoffs, a disastrous exit. I think the Cowboys get it done at home. I love them with the points as the home dog. I think they win this game outright too. And I'm very curious to see where the Bucs are with Brady, the retirement, then coming out of retirement, the change at head coach. I know that Brady's back and he looks great. He looks invigorated. But I'm curious to see how the Bucs come out of the gate to start the season. I think it could be a slower start for the Bucs. All they have to do is win the division, give a chance at the table in the playoffs. But in this Week 1 game, I like the Cowboys.
I forgot until I was putting this show together, or our producer put it together, and I was looking at it, that we get Broncos at Seahawks Week 1.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just throw it to us right out of the gate here. Whichever way you want to put it about it, Russell Wilson, Drew Lock, revenge game here. The Broncos favored by 3.5 on the road. I don't know if that should be more, Danny.
Right.
The total 41 and a hook.
I just love how the notes say it's a Drew Lock revenge game.
Yeah,
what
yeah,
about
yeah.
Russell Wilson, who just
I
got
said
drafted?
or Russell
Right?
Wilson.
I love it.
One of the two.
No, but I think this is going to be, I think the Seahawks are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. I really do. I think they're going to struggle. I don't think Drew Lock is the answer. I didn't love the draft selections that they made, drafting a pass-blocking tackle out of Mississippi State and then drafting a pretty one-dimensional back in Kenneth Walker. I think the Seahawks are going to struggle, and I think Russell Wilson is going to have a massive bounce-back year with an organization that's going to put some talent around him. So I like the Broncos to win big here in Russell's return to Seattle.
I'm with you. I think this is one of those games when you look at Seattle, I think they're rebuilding. They're trying to rebuild. We don't know what Drew Lock can do. They keep saying how bullish they are on him. But I'm with you. Russell Wilson, with those pass receivers, going to put up big numbers. I'll take the Broncos and lay the points.
All right, let's just jump straight to it. Your pick to win the Super Bowl, Pete, we'll start with you.
I'm going with the Buffalo Bills. I just think what they've done this offseason by adding a guy like Von Miller really changes the dynamic of what they are on defense. I think they had a really good draft, and that offense will be even better this time around. When you look at what they can do offensively, they're going to run the ball better with James Cook. He's going to get him involved in the passing game. I think getting Elam to play the other corner opposite Tre'Davious White will be big for them. And let's be real. If they didn't blow the final 13 seconds, of the game against the Chiefs, I think they win it all because I thought they were better than the Bengals, and I thought they would have beat the Rams. And believe me, I reminded a couple of those people in that organization about the 13 seconds, and all they do is wave me off quickly.
Like we do here, except he reminds us every time he's right about something.
I've been working with Pete today for 47 minutes. I've hated every minute because we're agreeing too much. I wish I could go off the board a little bit, give you some sort of dark horse or somebody a little bit of a longer shot. But I heard, talking about the Week 1 game, I think the Bills are a team on a mission. They've been getting so much closer. Pete mentioned some of the roster moves. They are fine-tuning a roster. They're not rebuilding. They're not trying to fill massive gaps. They are fine-tuning a roster. I think Josh Allen is clearly one of the favorites for the MVP. I would go ahead and take him for that. I think it's a monster year for the Bills. I think they get it done.
It's a fun team. I mean, I thought after we saw Stephon Diggs just staring into the abyss, they would get it done last season. Didn't happen. We'll see about this one. Pete Prisco, Danny Kanell, thank you guys so much. Taking a look at the odds to win the Super Bowl, both Pete and Danny picking the Bills, and sure enough, the Bills are the favorite. They're ahead of the Bucs, the Chiefs, the Packers, and then the reigning Super Bowl champs, the Rams. 100 days away from the start of the NFL season, but as we have seen from all things Major League Baseball recently, fantasy football is always on our minds. Hopefully it does not end in fights. We're about to take a look at who could be some of the biggest risers and fallers this season. Should Cooper Kupp be the first wide receiver off the board? Should we rely on Christian McCaffrey? And expectations for guys like Devontae Adams on his new team. Taking a look here at overall rankings, this is PPR, where they stand right now. Jonathan Taylor, number 1, followed by Austin Eckler, then Christian McCaffrey. By the way, you can find this list at CBSSports.com. Let's welcome in two of the guys behind fantasy football today. We have Jamey Eisenberg and Dave Richard here. Jamey, I wanted to remind people, and I'm glad I put this in the prompter here, that you actually made one of my friends win $20,000 and changed his career, so people need to be listening to your advice. Let's start with this topic here, the possibility of unseating Jonathan Taylor as the number 1 overall pick. Jamey, we'll start with you.
Well, first off, I'll give you my address to send your friend.
Yeah.
I think, when you look at what Jonathan Taylor did a year ago, I actually spoke to him a couple weeks ago for a story we're doing for our Fantasy Football magazine that should be out later this summer. He's doing all the right things to get himself ready to go, to have another big season. He has a chance to repeat as the rushing leader. He has a chance to repeat as an MVP candidate. Based on a quarterback upgrade, I think Matt Ryan will do wonders for that offense, a little bit better than what Carson Wentz showed us last year. But the thing that's, a little bit scary about Jonathan Taylor is his lack of involvement in the passing game. And I have a little bit of a man crush on Nyheim Hines this season. I think he's going to have a big season catching the ball in the backfield there, which could hurt Jonathan Taylor a little bit. But he does have the opportunity to be a 2,000-yard type of guy. He's going to probably have to lead the NFL in rushing once again, score probably close to 15-plus touchdowns, still be north of 35 receptions. He's the safest of the guys coming into the season at the top of the list, but I could see him getting passed by some of the pass catchers, specifically if Christian McCaffrey's healthy, he could unseat Jonathan Taylor this year.
And McCaffrey is one of 2 running backs that have been top 5 in PPR points per game each of the last 3 seasons. And this is counting McCaffrey when he's barely played. So bear with me a little bit on that stat. But we know what he's capable of doing, McCaffrey that is, as far as being huge as a pass catcher out of the backfield. So if we knew that he was going to play at least 12 games, there would be no question about it. He'd be the number 1 overall pick. People are afraid, though. They're afraid that he's going to get hurt and that he's not going to even give you 6 or 8 games. And that's the risk with your first-round pick when it's Christian McCaffrey. The other player who's been top 5 in PPR points per game each of the last 3 years, and this might surprise you, is Derrick Henry, who was actually number 1 in PPR points per game last year, even though he didn't catch a ton of passes. Even though he wasn't this amazing receiver in Tennessee, he split half the year on and off the field. When he came back, he looked just kind of okay. I don't think anybody should look at Derrick Henry and say, well, there's no chance of him being number 1. I'm not even sure he's top 5. When he's pretty much in the exact same mold as Jonathan Taylor. If Jonathan Taylor were to retire from football today, my number 1 overall pick would still be Derrick Henry, provided that he looks okay in training camp and any issues that he had coming back from his injury last year slows him down. I love him. I know he's going to get the ball a lot. He's a huge part of that Tennessee offense. It's a good Tennessee offensive line there, and he's going to score a ton of touchdowns.
After the NFL draft, you guys did a mock draft here. Cooper Kupp went 4th overall, first wide receiver off the board. Dave, does he still stand in that position for you?
Absolutely. You look at Cooper Kupp and what he did last year. Look, he was clearly the huckleberry for Matthew Stafford, and we thought Stafford was past the days of huckleberries when Calvin Johnson retired. Not so fast, but Kupp consistently got open. The way that offense was just schemed, Kupp was easily available to catch those Stafford passes downfield. Huge target share. I expect that to come down a little bit off of the 30+% that he had last year. Think about that, Amanda. 30% of the passes that Stafford threw went to Cooper Kupp. Even if that comes down to 25%, man, that's still going to be a great season for Cooper Kupp, and I still see him scoring a ton of touchdowns. The chase is now on to figure out who the next Cooper Kupp is going to be. And I kind of wonder if that's Allen Robinson on the same team. Could Matthew Stafford have 2 stud receivers? I think he might, because Allen Robinson's in line to have 120 targets himself. He can score plenty of touchdowns too. That's an offense that would love to take to the air, and they might have to take to the air because their entire run game is a big question mark at this point in the offseason.
I'm not exactly sure what huckleberries are, but I think that Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp are probably eating several of them based on what Aaron Donald said on a recent podcast, where he said he would show up to the facility and those 2 guys were already planning and getting ready to go in terms of Stafford and Kupp. The rapport is just tried and true right now after a full season together, and I think it's only going to get better. Hopefully Stafford's elbow's okay after the minor procedure that he had. But you look at this receiving core, Dave mentioned Allen Robinson. We hope that Allen Robinson's going to bounce back and play at a high level. They still haven't re-signed Odell Beckham, but that's a move they're going to make. They haven't really replaced Robert Woods yet completely. And so you're looking at what this receiving core looks like. Obviously, Matthew Stafford's going to feed Cooper Kupp. So he's in line to be the number 1 receiver coming into the year. Like Dave said, we'd like to find who the next guy is. You probably look at Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs, those type of guys. CeeDee Lamb, for me, is a dark horse candidate to be the number 1 wide receiver as well with his opportunity in Dallas. But you just look at really, and I think, you kind of chuckled about this, Amanda, Cooper Kupp going 4th overall. People kind of look at that and say, okay, does he go ahead of some of these running backs? Should he be a top 5 overall pick? If he has the chance to repeat anything close to what he did a year ago, which we think he's going to repeat close to what he did a year ago, you take him in the top 5, you don't even hesitate.
I want you to know, 1, I wasn't chuckling, I am choking. But 2, I have seen Tombstone like 3 times, and I'm still not even sure what I'm your huckleberry actually means. Maybe it is Saquon Barkley or Zeke Elliott. Let's talk about these guys. The chance that they could fall significantly in 2022. But Jamey, I want to start with you because you're kind of on the opposite side, at least when it comes to Saquon.
Yeah, I think the value for both these guys is going to be pretty amazing. When you look at what they have been and hopefully can still be, Barkley, you mentioned it, Amanda. We did our podcast, Bold Predictions, and one of my bold predictions is that Barkley can return as a top 5 running back once again. You've already got the one report saying that he's going to be heavily involved in the passing game, and that's huge for what he should be because he's one of the last true workhorse running backs. I don't think a guy like Matt Breida is taking him off the field. Brian Daboll, as a new head coach, is going to bring a better system, I think, in place for the Giants. I hope a better Daniel Jones as well, and certainly a better offensive line. So all Barkley's got to do, and it's a big task, is stay on the field and stay healthy, because he's really battled injuries the last 3 seasons. We know that. Had the ACL, had the ankle, battled injuries last year as well. But when he's right, and I think this is a big year for him because money's on the line, he's going to put up big numbers. In terms of Zeke, we all kind of saw last year he struggled through the season. How much of that was the knee problem? How much of it is he just really fading and now past his prime? They have a nice young running back behind him in Tony Pollard, but he's going to fall potentially to the 4th round, and it's hard to pass up a player like that in that spot. And so if you get Zeke at the right price, I'll buy in. I'm going to buy into Barkley at the end of round 2, beginning of round 3, depending on how my draft goes. If I get him in round 3, I'm thrilled about it, but definitely the arrow is still pointing up for me for Saquon Barkley.
And I'll paint the downside here for both of these running backs because let's face it, they're not the sure things that we thought they were last year, the year before, and so on. Ezekiel Elliott's 27, and last year, especially in the second half of the year, man, he looked washed. And I wonder if the Cowboys see that, if they see that in training camp, in preseason, those practices where if Ezekiel Elliott isn't doing what he used to do and Tony Pollard is, you're looking at a committee backfield. And Ezekiel Elliott has a wonderful track record, but I'm not going to get nostalgic about him. Round 4 would be the absolute earliest I would take him if it comes to pass. And this is a big if Ezekiel Elliott is still the guy that he was toward the end of last year. Now, he had the PCL injury. He's over that. Mike McCarthy was spewing about how he ran 22 miles an hour in a practice this offseason. Hey, that's great. He's fast. He's a professional athlete. He's supposed to be. He's got to find touchdowns, and he's got to get back to being that full workload guy for Dallas and push Tony Pollard into a small role. And I'm not sure if he can do that. With Saquon, he's 25 years old. He just has to stay healthy. If Saquon Barkley can stay healthy, then everything that Jamey said is not only right, but it's probably a little bit of a low bar because we know what the potential is for Saquon. But there are going to be at least 2 people in every fantasy league that are going to take a hard pass on Saquon Barkley because they had him during his injured years, and they're worried about that happening again. You could say the exact same thing for Christian McCaffrey, but he's going in round 1. At least in the case of Saquon, he's going in round 3. The offensive line's better. The offense should be better, and he should be used a little bit more as a pass catcher. I don't mind taking the chance on either one, but I'd really like to do it with Saquon. 35th overall is where I'm looking. And with Ezekiel Elliott, for now, it's like 40th, 45th overall, somewhere in that range.
Let's talk QB1. We had Pete and Danny on here, both of them predicting the Bills to win the Super Bowl. If you're looking at Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, Dave, who's your pick?
It's Josh Allen, and honestly, I'm not sure if Patrick Mahomes is the number 2 quarterback in fantasy. I think Justin Herbert could give him a run just because we know what Tyreek Hill meant for Patrick Mahomes. Huge cut of his yardage and touchdowns year after year went to Tyreek Hill. He's gone. Is there one guy that can replace Tyreek Hill? No. Are there multiple wide receivers who can replace Tyreek Hill? That's what the Chiefs are going to try and do, but I'm a little bit nervous about Mahomes hitting that ceiling. I'm not nervous at all with Josh Allen. That whole offense is about him. The Bills told us that this offseason when they didn't do much to bring in anybody to help their run game. In fact, the one running back that they did bring in was James Cook, and he's known as a pass-catching back. Who's going to throw him the football? It's Josh Allen. So that's just another outlet for Josh Allen to rack up yards through the air. He's going to find new ways to score touchdowns. They added some other pieces to that offense as well. You saw what Gabriel Davis is capable of in the playoffs, and you know what Stephon Diggs can do. And you know that this offense in Buffalo is not about to say, yeah, we've got all these great pass catchers. Let's hand the ball off 25 times a game. Not happening. Josh Allen's going to be a monster, easy number 1 fantasy quarterback who I bet you're going to see people in some leagues take him in round 1 or round 2. I wouldn't take him that high because I always like to wait to take my quarterbacks, but he will be my first one off the board, and I'd be comfortable doing it late round 3.
Yeah, if we can you show the graphic again, just the comparison between the projections for both these guys? Because I think the one thing that stands out, and this is what's going to separate Josh Allen, because you look, our projections, they're probably pretty close. With Mahomes throwing for more yards, the touchdowns similar, obviously the interceptions. It's that rushing number. And what do we see from quarterbacks as they continue to mature? The rushing starts to come down. If Josh Allen's rushing numbers get cut in half and get anything close to Patrick Mahomes, Mahomes will probably have the better fantasy season. But I think you should still draft him first because of what he does with his legs, because of what he does as a rusher near the goal line. Those opportunities which you combine with his passing numbers, makes him such a special talent, which is why he's been so successful the last 2 seasons. And so Josh Allen should be the first quarterback off the board. The decision really comes down to who you're going to take second. Mahomes is my second favorite. Dave said Justin Herbert's in the conversation. Don't be surprised if there's a bounce-back season for Lamar Jackson, especially if he runs to the level that we saw a couple of years ago and certainly gets the touchdowns from his legs like we saw a couple of years ago. But you have so many good quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts is going to have a monster season this year. Kyler Murray, if everything goes right in Arizona and he's not a holdout, could have another special season. Don't forget about Dak Prescott. We'll see Deshaun Watson. The position is deep, but Josh Allen's the best one coming into the year.
Gentlemen, I'll be your huckleberry. I didn't even say that right. I even practiced it while you guys were talking. I will be your huckleberry. We'll figure out what that means over the next 100 days. Guys, thank you so much. 2 of the gentlemen behind the Fantasy Football Today podcast there. Latest episode, Jamey's bold prediction. Saquon Barkley top 5. Jamey will tell you why he thinks that could in fact happen. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.